Billy Soksoda was born outside of Vientiane, Laos around the time of the communist takeover. At the age of 3, he fled the country with his mother, and they resettled in the United States as refugees. The family found themselves living in a tough Sacramento neighborhood, so Billy's mom decided to move the family to Redding, a small city in California's rural north. It was in Redding that Billy would be introduced to a popular local sport that would change his life, rodeo. The first time he climbed on the back of a raging bull, he was hooked. Billy would compete in rodeos throughout the West, racking up titles and accolades as he rode with the PCRA and California Cowboys. Bull riding is just one part of Billy's amazing story, so join us as we talk to this cowboy, Muay Thai fighter, entrepreneur, coach, family man, and soon to be Dr. Soksoda.
Really, were you watching the game?
No, I was ready for my my nephew's birthday party. So I'm at his house and they're playing Uno on the living room.
Oh, okay. Thanks for joining us here then. While you're at the birthday party. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, we thought you were watching. We thought you were watching the game since you're from Northern California.
Watching
not a 49er fan?
Oh no, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
And I grew up in Sacramento. We were all Redskins fan.
Redskins.
All the little, all the Lao community there. We're all Redskins fan.
I didn't know that. I knew a lot of Raiders fans. I didn't know there were a lot of Redskins fans.
Yeah, we were. That's how I became a Redskins fan because I was only really young, so I really didn't know much about football. But everybody loved the Redskins. So
cool.
Redskins and the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said you're at a birthday party, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we won't. Let's just get rolling. That we don't want to take up too much of your time. Welcome everybody to the C4 podcast, C4 Southeast Asian Athletes Achievement Through Adversity. So initially, John had approached me and talked about the Hall of Fame and inducting Laotian athletes into the Laotian Sports Hall of Fame. And, I never really thought of myself. I did turn professional and I'm a pro bodybuilder and did pretty well, but I don't think I ever really saw myself, as a Hall of Famer. But, I did like the idea because it would bring awareness to more athletes that are from Laos. What are they doing around the world? And it would give us an opportunity to go and look for them, to find them. And, we found you, we found, football player, we found Paralympic, we found a skateboarder. We found so many more athletes that we had no idea were out there, right? So after we had gotten involved in LASHOF, Lao American Sports Hall of Fame, I came up with the idea for C4 to talk about the challenges and the adversities that Southeast Asians, we wanted to broaden up the region, and not just focus on Laos, but focus on Southeast Asia. We wanted to focus on the challenges and adversities, because when you hear this person is in a sports hall of fame and this is what they've accomplished, your first instinct was like, wow, that's great. That's awesome. I'm very proud, right? I wanted to take a step further, and I wanted to, with me, I wrote my own book, and I had a documentary done because I wanted to share my story, because it wasn't as pretty or as glamorous as people had thought. Like, wow, you're in great shape and must be awesome, look like that. And, you must be so proud of your accomplishments. And nothing was further from the truth. I had so much to overcome, right? I didn't have a hero. I did not have a Lao hero to look up to in bodybuilding. I pretty much had to pave my own way. Bill, you could probably understand having the family just, not be supportive. Education was supportive. Why don't you study, go to school, be an engineer, be a doctor, be a lawyer. why pursue bodybuilding? And anyways, you're too small, right? Then when mom adds on to it, boy, she doesn't pull any punches, right? It's like, you're too small, you're so tiny, you're gonna get crushed. And I was like, so having to deal with that was my initial, I thought the outside world would be my adversity. Unfortunately for me, it was from my own family. So I'd love to hear stories of, again, when we found out about you, that's awesome to hear a pro bull rider, of Lao descent. But I want to hear your story. I want to hear, what type of challenges, adversities, anything, did you deal with racism, discrimination? How was your family? So we really want to hear it all. So with that, I'm gonna pass over here to John.
Yeah,
he's gonna take over here.
Thanks, Co. Yeah, Billy, your interview in particular is kind of special to me. We're the same age. My wife was born in Laos like you, right at the same time when the government collapsed and left. So she has a very similar immigration story to you. Like you, we both grew up in this rural part of Northern California, and I was never brave enough to hop on the back of a bull, but I certainly got into rodeo. There's a great rodeo culture in this part of the country, out west. And I had a cousin in my family who was our family's rodeo star. And unfortunately, he was taken from us way too soon. My cousin Kenny, he passed away at the age of 32. And I always got inspiration from him as somebody, because much like you, his mom was a first generation Italian American. His dad was a farm boy from the Midwest, but it was unique for our family to have a rodeo star. And he kind of got my interest in the sport when I was a little kid, and then growing up in the area and being around it with other friends, I really took a liking to it. Again, not as brave as you, never climbed on the back of a bull. But I haven't been to a good rodeo since I left Northern California. I live in Illinois now, and they have these more choreographed shows, but not a good, like, hey, let's throw our money in the bucket and see who wins the prize type of local rodeo like you have in these smaller towns and around California and out west in general. So I'm really excited for that reason. This one's very special. And I did want to dedicate this episode to my cousin Kenny, since we lost him way too early. He's our rodeo star in our family. So with that, Billy, we want to kind of start at the beginning. You have an amazing story. Start with your background in Laos, kind of your family over there, your birth, and your escape to America. Tell us all about it.
Well, my mom kind of grew up in a rice kind of farm with my grandpa. So my dad, is actually from Vientiane. So my mom moved there. It was his brother-in-law was actually a military guy from the U.S. And so when the war ended and the government collapsed, they took him, his sister, and his brothers all and they asked my mom to go, and she didn't want to leave because her family's there. So she didn't think my dad would leave. So one day she, woke up and realized my dad had left. And so with her, she was her, my older brother, my sister, and she was still pregnant with me. And so when she found out he left, she had to raise the three of us kind of by herself. And I kind of was born about a month or so after he left. And so she moved back home, and she actually was with my grandpa and lived out there. And then it got to be where we were working the rice field, and she said that, they were feeding us rotten rice and so forth. And so she actually spoke up, and that was her bad. I guess it was bad for her because she spoke up and they threatened to kill her. So we left the countryside and went to the city. And so that's where she met my stepdad, and he was a Thai citizen. So he was able to kind of get us over to to Thailand from, through the Mekong River so that we can get to the US. And so we snuck actually in the middle of the night one night. And I remember, this is a story that I'll always remember because Mom told me this, that she said that everybody in the boat said to kind of drown me because I was a baby and I would make noise. And so my mom said, either all of us go or none of us go. And so luckily I didn't make any noise. We crossed the river, went over to Nong Khai and stayed there for 3 years before we were on and was able to fly to the US.
What year was this?
This was, see, I was born in 75.
Okay.
So, you know, it was kind of, we left it when I was 2, so 77.
So you came into the U.S. around 1980, maybe, Billy? 79, 80?
Yep.
Yeah.
My actually 82 is when we came to the U.S. My sister was born in, actually my youngest sister was born in the camp, at the relocation camp.
Okay. Yeah.
So you were in Thailand for a few years then.
Yeah, we were in Thailand for 2002, and then I got for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you would have been in Nong Khai the same time as my wife, the exact same time they got there. They were there about 3 years, and it came over in 1980. So
yeah, because I was looking at pictures because I've seen some on YouTube of all the, you know, the Nong Khai relocation camp, and I'm looking at that. I couldn't find pictures of us, but there's a lot of cool pictures though.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's a great story about you know, you being a baby and they wanted, not great, but it's an amazing story about how much your mother, you know, her love for you, by saying, you know, no, if he goes weak, you know, like that she didn't support that. That's that's very touching right there.
Oh,
So
yes.
it's almost not like you were meant to be here, you know.
Yeah, no, I love my mom, and you know, the strength it took to, you know, raise 3 kids during that time and go through all that to make sure that we have a better life, which makes it funny with the rodeo story, because you know, we'll talk about that later, you know.
Yeah. So anyway, I know you first landed in Utah, but then you guys ended up in Sacramento. I know. Tell us about your time growing up in Sacramento, and since I grew up in that area as well, I'll chime in with some of the things that were going on back then. But tell us about your childhood in Sacramento.
Well, in Sacramento, we lived off of right by Broadway. Actually, we live off T Street, and so it was a lot of bad things that happened. I'd walk to school and there'd be a kidnapping that happened right before, you know, my bus stop. Definitely a lot of gang related stuff. We would get jumped all the time. My brother got jumped, and then he chased the guy down with a knife, and it took the whole crew, you know, to stop him, because he was, you know, so upset that they jumped him. And it was a daily thing for us. And but we'd walk to school and they'd be, you know, crimes and stuff. I think even in Nong Khai, I always saw the good in everything. You know, I had fun. I remember all the good stuff. I remember going, because my stepdad would take us hunting and fishing on the weekends, and we would just, I don't remember, because we'd fish at the pond there towards Sutter and stuff. And so, because I went to Sutter Middle School, and there'd be a pond as you're walking there. And so we'd always go fishing there. And that's the stuff I remember. Yeah, getting jumped, getting chased by the Mexican gangs, you know, and then there was a Chinese gang also. So it's like, there's so many different gangs in that town. And I remember in the 5th grade, my friend was selling cocaine and asked me if I wanted to, because, I mean, he makes $200 a day is what he was telling me, you know, and that seemed like pretty enticing when you don't have money.
Yeah.
You know, but my mom would never, always told us to go to school and stay in school and do better, you know, better yourself. She brought us to America so that we can better ourselves. And so it was when my brother got to high school at Sac High, he got truly jumped then by a Vietnamese gang. That's where my mom decided that, you know, Sacramento was way too rough and tough for us. So we need to move to somewhere kind of safer. And that's why we moved to Redding.
Yeah. So there was a lot going on at that time. You know, Sacramento was really a government town. There's, of course, the state capital, but you also had a lot of military installations. We had Mather Field, we had the Sacramento Army Depot there in South Sac, a little bit south of where you lived, and there was also agriculture and food processing from the rice fields and the almond orchards and what have you around there. But with the defense cuts that came in the 80s and then especially in the 90s, I think you were probably moving right around with the really big defense cuts. In the closing of Mather, the unemployment rate in the area and everything got really bad. There was really a rise in gang violence. And we have a very large Southeast Asian community there, a lot of Hmong, Lao, Cambodian, Vietnamese, that you were resettled in some pretty rough areas. and some of those areas, have really turned around, and there's a lot of businesses now, and they've revived them after those military families moved out. But it got really rough. And Billy, you probably remember things like the Good Guys massacre, right? Where the Vietnamese gang went in and took 40 hostages and I kid you not, I watched it on live TV as a kid. They executed the people in front of the window. There was just this rash of violence around that time in the area that made it a little rough.
Wow.
Yeah. So especially I didn't live in that part of Sacramento. But it was a little dangerous down there at the time. It's improved quite a bit now, though. I was just down there about 2 weeks ago, and it's improved quite a bit. But yeah, so your mom wanted to get you out, and she chose Redding, way up in the northern corner of the state, a city, but in what's really known as a rural area at the top of the Central Valley. So tell us about that move and maybe the adjustment that you had to go through.
Well, it was tough because there was a little Lao community up here, so she decided, that would be a good place to come up. Because then we had kind of friends and family in Sacramento. Yeah, so like I said, we got to Redding, and we were staying with friends here, and it was, coming from Sutter and Sacramento area where there was every nationality there was, and then coming to Redding where it was 90% Caucasians here. It was so, and then every time. It's because you're the new kid anyway. And I was put in the gifted as soon as I showed up here because I was already gifted in Sacramento. And so I got kind of all the older kids wanted to pick them. And I jumped a grade. They actually jumped me from 5th grade and skipped 6th to go to 7th. And they asked me if I actually wanted to jump to 8th because my test scores were high enough. And I told them not to because my sister was already in that grade. Didn't want to be in the same grade as her. And so, like I said, it was rough because all the kids would just kind of try to pick on you, and I'd fight everybody just to make sure, at the drop of a dime, to make sure nobody thought that I was kind of a wimp. Like I said, coming from Sacramento, you had to do that because, in Sacramento, I fought every day just to survive, just to make sure that nobody would pick on you. And so I felt that I had my back against the wall here in Redding, but I did have a small Asian community group of friends that and one guy in particular, my friend who, we kind of knew each other in Sacramento, and so he kind of had my back, and we stayed friends. And then when he moved away the next year, it was rough with the Asian community because I'm not 100% Lao. I'm partially Vietnamese, and so when they found that out, the Lao community kind of cast me out too.
Oh,
that was rough, And so that's kind of where Redding kind of became where I didn't know where I fit because I couldn't fit in with the white people. I couldn't fit in with the Lao people. And, so the only people that accepted me was the Mien people, really. And so we just kind of hung out and, I just kind of did my thing, got into sports there, played football with people, that's when I started playing a lot of football, actually, at junior high, just playing playground football, basketball, any sports there was, baseball, we'd go on the weekends and just play. And so it kept me away from, because at the time, I don't know if you know about Redding much, but the Lao gang was getting big then. And then later on, the Mien gang got really, really big in Redding. I mean, it was where people were afraid to go to the park because the Mien gang would actually run the park.
The Mien gang, that's another Asian gang?
Yeah, they're one of the hill tribes, similar to the Hmong. And there's a very large community in Sacramento and then the surrounding cities in the Central Valley, like Redding, So I think to some of us who grew up in there, we're very familiar with the people, but they're not all that well known, probably out of Northern California is my guess. Yeah.
Gosh, I get the Midwest was easy compared to you guys. It's just pretty quiet. I mean, we had gangs, but it was more towards Chicago. And if you were out in the suburbs, you were kind of okay. So I really didn't grow up with that. It's quite interesting here because even when we had Chris was from Sacramento, and we shared the stories about gangs too. So
yeah, and you're right. It's not in this part of the country. And I say this part because I actually happen to be here right now. I'm not at home in Illinois. The gangs aren't limited to the big cities, Billy. Right? They're in these small towns, especially in the Central Valley. There's a lot of poverty. A lot of these towns are agricultural. There's a transient population sometimes, and you'll find gangs in what seems like a smaller city. in the middle of nowhere sometimes. So it's a little bit different than in the Midwest. Co and I live 5 minutes apart, right? We're out way in the suburbs. And not a whole lot happens out there, right? We watch it, we hear on TV about what's happening in Chicago, but our area is pretty quiet. So tell us, you played football in high school then, Billy? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I was just fast, and so I'd actually played baseball. I started my 9th grade year. They had tryouts. It's 3 teams. It was kind of a unique deal. They had all the freshmen on the 9th graders from around the area would come to one school. And so they'd have 3 different teams and everybody would try out. And then they drafted the NFL. And I remember we all would sit there and watch. And I was surprised because, like I said, that was my first year playing organized football ever. And I was drafted number 1. And I was like excited because I thought, great. And then we had a great team that year, but we didn't do really well. So my freshman year, I played wide receiver and safety. And then my sophomore year, I played slot, receiver, which is a Z-back, and cornerback. Junior year, I still played the Z-back position. And then my senior year, I became a 2-back, a halfback, and I did all the special teams there. That's kind of my football. I mean, I had fun playing football. I had a lot of all-purpose yardage type of deal because that's the kind of player I was. And I'm only 5'8", 5'7", it depends on what shoes I wear, and about 125 pounds. And so, but I ran a 4.6 40, so I was pretty fast. And it was, like I said, they'd give me the ball and just run, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I wanted to play college ball, but I wasn't big enough. I went to college, and the coach said I need to get more weight on me, and I couldn't gain any weight. So I went to kickball.
Yeah.
So what was your transition then? You enjoyed football. How did you discover rodeo, and what made you decide this is where you wanted to pursue?
I enjoy football, baseball. I also, and I did a lot of sports. I did a lot of basketball also. But one of my football buddies, they were making fun of this one player, Luke. He's a steer wrestler, but they all say he's a cow wrestler. So I'm like, what the heck is that? I had no idea what that was, right? So they're like, no, he really does. He wrestles cows. I'm like, no, he doesn't. And so they're like, he's part of the rodeo. And so Reading is known for one of the biggest rodeos in the world. Reading Rodeo is famous. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to buy a ticket. My buddy and I went and watched the whole rodeo. Saw the last event, was bull riding. And I saw this bull, Wolfman, bucked, and he was so electric. He jumped out there and spun and was in the air. And I just thought, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. It looked way too much fun, and I want to try it. So what I did was I ended up buying a video, Don Gay, How to Ride Bull video. And I watched it, went to the local feed store, bought me a bull rope, some boots, and then entered a junior rodeo. I had some friends, I asked them, and they had a junior rodeo. It's the Red Bluff Junior Rodeo. It's for high school kid and below. And in my first rodeo, got on this bull, rode him for 8 seconds, and then jumped off and was excited, ran back. And but I slapped him, I guess, but it didn't matter. I rode him, so it was so much fun. And that was the one and only time my mom ever went to a rodeo. She's like, she saw it and she goes, that's too dangerous. She goes, I didn't bring you all the way from Laos to die on a bull. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to die. She goes, no, you need to go to school. Forget this rodeo stuff. That's dangerous. Like, I didn't bring you here so you could die here. But, that I got hooked. After that, I started looking for rodeo schools to go to because, if you're going to do something, might as well go to school to figure out how to do it. So
how old were you when you entered your the junior rodeo?
I was 18.
Okay.
So I was 18, and I was able to persuade my older brother, who was he was kickboxing at the time, to join me at the rodeo school. So the two of us went down to Sacramento area, Rio Linda, and there was a rodeo school there, and it was soaking wet, and we were 3 days in the mud riding bulls, but it was so much fun. After that, we just started kind of finding rodeos to go to. We signed up for the amateur deal, which is CCA, and we started I would spend every summer, I'd save all my money as I can during the year, and then go rodeo during the summer, and just did it, as long as I could.
Yeah, so we need to give a little shout out to your brother Joey because Billy, you've gotten a lot of press for being the only Lao rodeo guy, but there's actually your brother, right? Has did it for not as long as you, but for a little bit, right?
He did. He did it with me for I think 3 years, and then he wanted to focus on Muay Thai and kickboxing, so he kind of went that direction.
When did you pursue turning professional, or what was there a contest that you had to enter? Did you have to qualify?
So no, like I was saying, you could just enter pro shows, but you have to qualify to go to the bigger events like Reading, Red Bluff, Salinas, Santa Maria, all those Livermore, all those shows you have to qualify to get into. But everything else, like some of the small show, Marysville, you just buy a card and join in there. But to be able to get to the bigger show, that's when you have to qualify.
So anyway, Billy, what did your family think? I mean, what your mom in particular, as you and Joey were on this journey of trying this out?
She was definitely not very supportive because I was still going to school to be because she told me a long time ago that I had the brains. I need to go to school and become a teacher, a lawyer, something like that, where I could sit behind a desk all day long. And I wanted I wanted a rodeo. I wanted to go on and chase my dream. And she's just always worried. Every time I'd call home and she wanted to make sure that I was still alive and I was okay and everything else. Because my brother and I would go, we still leave Friday and not show back up till Sunday night type of deal. And we would just spend the night on the road. And so my sister's gotten a couple of rodeos with me, and there's actually a videotape, which was videotaping. She almost dropped the camera because the bull was hooking me and she was just screaming. It was funny. But it's not something that it wasn't something that they looked at and go, okay, yeah, go for it. I mean, because every other stuff I did wasn't when we did Muay Thai, when I did track, because I ran track in college, it wasn't anything, something like that. But rodeo was so dangerous that it scared my mom, and she didn't want to see it, make sure we're okay, and she just wants me to go to school.
Yeah. And how did the Cowboys, the other rodeo Cowboys, accept you? Because I've been around the sport, and it's Caucasian and Hispanics, right? They're all over the sport. That's the norm. Asian guy, I don't think, other than you and Joey, I don't know any.
There's James is a Japanese bull rider. He by a Caucasian family. He lives actually down in San Diego, I believe. Heck of a bull rider. James Maishima, I believe his name is. He's a great guy. But yeah, the three of us is all I know of. But I wasn't well accepted because, again, he's from down in LA area, San Diego, so it was more accepted for him. But being here in Northern California, the racism was high, especially in Reading. I mean, it's like they would call us names and start fights with us. And my brother, he was a little hot tempered. And so anytime someone would say something, he'd want to fight them and argue with them. And it's like, you know what, let's just let her ride and do the talking. And so I didn't like getting a lot of arguments with guys. And yeah, it would, for a while there, it wasn't bad because they actually would butcher my last name. And so they made it sound Indian or not Native American type of deal, And so it was okay. Cause like I was at the NFR buying a bull one time and they're like, oh, I like this, Indian kid here. He just has cash because I was buying. And so I'm like, yeah, all right. And so when they find out I'm not Indian and I'm actually Asian, it's sometimes not friendly, especially when you go to rodeos in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of scary sometimes.
Yeah.
What happened? Did that change as you moved up the ranks and you started proving yourself, that now they saw you as like, did they see you as now more of a threat when you started moving up the ladder?
Well, rodeo's not kind of fun because like once you get to be where, you're accepted as a bull rider, not, a wannabe or not something else, they're not as, like, my friends never saw me as a competitor. We always want him, like they're over there. I remember one time my buddy would be like, if you don't ride him, I'm like, kick your butt. And then I'd ride the bull and they'd be all excited for me, with me. And so, but yeah, once you get to be where you could start showing them rides and stuff, you're riding bulls, and their friends, they hang out with you. And yeah, it does change where they don't look at you as, okay, an Asian bull rider anymore. You're just one of their buddies, you know, you just rodeo with them, and we all make fun of each other, and it's just all good fun. And then, like I said, we're all cheering for each other. I mean, it's especially when we rodeo with a bunch of guys. And so it's always great to come out and, you know, my buddy Joe would win a rodeo, I'd win one, Johnny win one, and then we'd go out and eat together, and whoever won that day would have to pay for dinner. And so I remember I went to Victorville and took Sucking down there, and I had to buy all my buddies, you know, dinner because they all bucked off, and it was just good time, you know, friendly. Like I said, it's great memories with all of them. And in the beginning, yeah, it was rough because it was just my brother and I, and it was just the two of us. We would be together, we'd hang out together, we'd, you know, get ready together, and we'd leave together. But once where I broke free, where I started riding my bulls and they started seeing me as a bull rider, I started having friends, you know, and then we're rodeoing together, we're spending the night in hotels together, we're traveling together.
Yeah. Well, now I know you guys took a little break because Joey was big into Muay Thai. Actually had your own school. Some exciting stuff happened with that too. Tell us a little bit about those years that you guys went in a different direction with your athletics.
Well, my brother, he loves martial arts, and so he trained in a few martial arts before he started training in Muay Thai. I happened to see a flyer pop up that there was a Muay Thai gym in San Francisco, and it was, you know, the coaches were from Thailand. And so I was able to persuade my brother to travel with me because I love learning. And so I wanted to learn Muay Thai just to learn. And so we would leave Friday after work, drive down to San Francisco. We would train Friday night and then Saturday morning, and then come back because that's how they close Sunday. So we would, you know, come back Saturday night. And we did that for 5 years. And so then we opened up a gym here in Redding because they didn't have one. And so my brother started kind of having his own gym, and we started training fighters out of this area and training kids out of this area. And it was great because, like I said, I enjoy teaching and I enjoy learning. And so we started kind of getting the gym going, and we were the only real Muay Thai gym north of Sacramento, really. And we started getting to be where, you know, people started actually not liking us because there'll be a lot of martial arts gym that would say they're Muay Thai, but it's kickboxing, and they didn't understand. And so, and we always told them we're the only authentic Muay Thai gym in Northern California or north of Sacramento. And they get all mad because they're like, we teach Muay Thai. And we're like, you know, we're the only one sanctioned by by Fairtex, and we're sanctioned by, we were the only California, out of the Fairtex, known in Thailand. We actually had some gyms in Thailand that recognized us, and so we were the techniques we were teaching were actually authentic techniques. It wasn't something that people just made up. We learned it from Bunkut, which is my instructor. He's still here in America teaching, and he won Lupani, he won Rajadon, which are two big stadiums in Thailand, and he was the most loved fighter in Thailand in 1 year. And, you know, I had some of the greatest trainers. I had Jungson on Fairtex, which you could see him on YouTube. That guy they call him the Wooden Man. He's an amazing guy, you know, fun guy to teach. I learned the basics from Bunkut. See, I had 3 trainers there. I had Bunkut, Jungson and Ganyao. Ganyao was like he wanted everything to be perfect, and he wanted to teach the way he taught in Thailand. He would hit us with bamboo stick if we did something wrong, and then he was told he couldn't do that anymore in America, and so he had to stop doing that. And Bunkut was the technical guy. He wanted everything to look pretty and everything else. And I had Jung Sanan, who was a flashy guy. He's like, yeah, you know, he teach me how to grab a leg and throw the guy against the rope and jump up and kick him and make it more exciting for, you know, the fans. And so I'd fight that way. And Bunkut, we get so mad when I fight that way because, you know, I want to do the flying knee. I wanted the fans happy and everything else. But it's just, yeah, like I said, my brother, it was more my brother's thing that wanted to fight and compete. And we just kind of, you know, like I said, there was a need here for teaching Muay Thai because everybody thought that it was all the same. And so we wanted to teach the traditional Muay Thai. We taught him the Y crew. We taught him respect. We taught him all the stuff that, you know, would be in a Thai gym type of deal. And so, and then a lot of people started calling it Muay Lao and stuff because it's, you know, Lao people also taught Muay Thai. And we had a Song Lit who is out in Canada. He said, you know, Muay Thai is Thai, but Muay Lao is also the same thing. It's just we also did it in Laos, and we used to come across the bridge and fight, and compete. And so then we started seeing more Muay Lao gyms up and so forth.
It's kind of like papaya salad, right? You got the Lao version and the Thai version, but at the end of the day, it's all good. So,
yes.
Yeah. And you guys actually went to Thailand, right? I believe.
We got picked to be on Team USA. We were picked to be in Team USA. My visa didn't come in time because I needed my visa to get over there. But we were, like I said, we were on Team USA. I was supposed to fight at the 112 weight class, fighting at 115, but we didn't get to go.
What year is this that you're supposed to go?
98, I believe. When I have to look back, but I think it's a 98. It's when we were picked to go.
Was it Olympic? What was the competition? Was it Olympics? Was
it Asian World Championship?
Oh, okay.
So it had all the countries in Southeast Asia. It had also countries from Europe. It's a world kind of. It's because Muay Thai is not an Olympic sport, so what they do every year they would have an annual thing, and so that was the one time that we had the opportunity to go. And then after that, I think it got canceled for a couple of years, I think, and then they brought it back and fighting.
Okay. Let's switch gears for that. Tell us about your son William, and how having him, how did that impact your life or change your life?
Well, when William was born, I kind of had to stop riding bulls because I know how dangerous bull riding is, and I didn't want my son to not have a father. And so the first few years of his life, I quit riding bulls. I started contracting. I started raising bucking bulls and started hauling bulls for Alex Nacarado, which is one of the famous breeds in California. So I would go to his ranch, pick up the bulls, take them to rodeos, flank them for him, and everything else. I would do that for 2 years while my son was still, young, and I wanted to make sure that he had a dad. And so it shifted everything for me. And having a son obviously changed what you want to do. And so it was, like I said, it changed me. I just became a contractor. Instead, caught me the side of the contractor, started the side of raising bucking bulls and hauling them and taking them to rodeos. And I got to see that side of it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's good. And so I know at some point after William was born, you got back into rodeo, right?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Go ahead.
That's the fun start, I think, because his mom and I are not together, and his mom decided she wanted, because she was she grew up in Reading, and she didn't really have the opportunity to explore and see the world. And so when we moved down to the Bay Area, she got to explore to the world and wanted to kind of get a divorce and move on. And so that's when I got back into riding bulls, because I didn't really have a family to worry about except for my son. And so it made it where, actually, to be honest with you, it was probably a hard time for me, because that's, in my opinion, that was the only thing that I consider a failure, because I failed in a marriage, but it wasn't, And so I went to rodeo in a different, I guess, way, because I didn't care if I got hurt at the time, because my son's already 2 years old. He's gonna be, I felt that he was, because the first year of his life was really worrisome, but then now he's 2 years old, and he has memories with me, and it's gonna have pictures of me. So I kind of went out and kind of rode with recklessness, I guess. So, and I did better. I did a lot better. I rode some bulls prior to that, but I never really won an event. I've always been second, a third, and anything else. I never won an event. And I remember one time, this is the one that his mom and I were kind of splitting up, and I went to the first rodeo and hurt my knee. And so I couldn't walk the next day, and I'm laying there, and I got another rodeo to go to. So I went to another rodeo, and then my spurs got hooked onto the rope. And so the bulls dragged me around. So now I could barely walk. And so then I this rodeo in Sierraville, and I happened to draw the buck and bull of the year. And I'm like, great. I'm already sore. I'm hurt. It's the third rodeo. I was debating on even showing up. So I drive to the rodeo, and I get on this bull. They name him JoJo. And my buddy rode him for 87 points the week before to win the rodeo. And And so I get on him, and I remember that's the one that my buddy goes, "Hey, if you don't ride this bull, I'm gonna kick your butt." And I'm like, "All right, well, you get ride this bull." And he just laughs. And so I nod my head, and the bull blows in the air, and I'm riding him. I'm all, holy mac, I'm still on him. And and kicking and spinning, and I'm like, I'm still riding this bull. And then at the second, I thought I was gonna buck off because once you feel comfortable, you like start to think. And so then I got strung out, and I heard the buzzer go, and I hit the ground. I look at the judge; they all gave me thumbs up. And so I ended up being 77 points, and I win the rodeo, and nobody else rides a bull that day. So I win all the money. It was like almost $3,000. And so it was a fun time. My son was there. William was there to see it, and it was great timing. It was my first win. He was there, and it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of 8 seconds. Does it feel like an eternity when you're on there?
It does. It's like it's funny sometimes if you're tapped, it feels like forever. I mean, you're just riding there, bull's just going, and you're just going, and it's like it feels like, I don't know, probably a minute or two. I mean, it's just crazy. And then you're sitting there going, come on, the whistle's got to be going here soon. And you wait for the whistle to go, and it feels like it's been like I said, a minute or two, and you're still in the back.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, what kind of music did you listen to as you were riding? Did you listen to the cowboy type songs, like the Chris Ledoux's and stuff like that? I love the songs about the rodeo, because even I can relate about, when I was competing, picking the bodybuilding show over the relationship, and that's what Chris Ledoux's songs were about, being on the road, being alone, and just, going for that 8-second ride. So that's how it gets. That's the one I enjoyed that. I love country. So that's probably the only thing I didn't listen to was like rap music.
I listened to, because when I was in Sacramento, all my friends listened to rap and stuff, and I listened to Holly Dunn. I remember they all bought this Fat Boys thing, and I bought Holly Dunn records. It's Daddy's Hands. And so I was a Randy Travis fan, and I listened to Sacramento, I listened to country all the way through, and it's kind of you had to be your own, because that's how it's always been. Even though my friends did something different, I always did what I wanted to do.
Yeah. But it's an individual sport. It's just you and the bull. So that's like you don't find too much camaraderie and like bodybuilding or bull riding. It's just you versus you. So did you ever experience that? Did you ever feel like, I know you went up and came up with your brother, but did you ever feel like that, like the loneliness sometimes? And did you embrace the loneliness, or did it bother you? How did you handle being on the road all the time?
Well, the road was lonely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times eventually we started having rodeo partners, and we had 4 guys we'd go with, but very rarely when I got to the pro level that I would go by myself, because we'd have 1 or 2 guys. I remember we ran from Hollister to New Mexico to Texas, and I did that with 2 other guys, and it was a long run, and we'd be sleeping in the car, but you just didn't do it on your own the more you went up. And in the beginning of my career, if my brother wasn't in at a rodeo, he couldn't. It going to be just me driving out there, and I was all by myself trying to find a rodeo, and back then it didn't have Google Maps. So you look on a piece of paper trying to find a small town, seeing where it's at, and making sure you don't get lost.
Yeah, so so you kind of, after that first Sierraville rodeo and up until your retirement, you really started traveling and had some of your best success. Billy, tell us maybe about your proudest moment or moments during that span between then and your retirement.
Well, in 2005, it was a great year for me. For me, if you're a real big star, you can make a lot more money than I did. But I made $35,000 that year, and I was winning almost every jackpot around. I was winning every rodeo I went to. It was great. I was placing all the time. That was a good year for me. But qualifying for Salinas Rodeo was great, because I was top 35 in the state and the pros. And so that was, I think they took 40 guys at the top. You had to be top 40 in the state, and I was top 35, and so I was able to go in that rodeo. And being able to go to Pendleton, that was the big deal in the PBR. just being able to compete there. I mean, you know, that was awesome. I went down to San Maria where I was competing against some world champions, and I was able to ride my bull. And it's just, like I said, and then, you know, just actually a couple of years ago, that's going to be 10 years ago. Gosh, it felt like a couple of years ago when I qualified in the top 10 in the state of California for the finals. But I went in there with a busted knees, and hoping to crawl up and try to win the state that year. But with a bad knee, I couldn't stay there. And that was my last year riding. So it was just, like I said, there's times, and my Sierraville was one I always remember because it's my first, but winning, all the other ones and all the jackpots I won, and being able to go and compete against some of the best guys. And Pendleton was like, I felt like a rock star in that PBR. And so it was just, it's like I said, it's tough to kind of say, oh yeah, this, because all the buckles and winning the finals, even at the Western Bull Riding Association in 2008 was great because, against some of the best guys I had there, I won the finals. And it's just, it's the overall, I think. I mean, because I'm not, anywhere near some of these guys. Some of my buddies, like one of the kids who's supposed to be rodeoing with me, he went to the national finals 4 times now, and I remember when he was a rookie, he's like planning on traveling with me because I was a veteran, and now he's able to get there and be top in the world, and it's great to see these kids get there.
Yeah,
Right.
For sure.
Tell us your life after retiring. What did you get into coaching, teaching? What was your life like, now that you weren't competing anymore?
Well, no, I coach football. I coached for 3 years at Red Bluff High School at the JV level, and I coached receivers and defensive backs and special coach. And then I went over to CV where I was the JV head coach. And then this last year I was at West Valley. I was the varsity receiver, defensive back coach, and also the special teams coach. And so I coach football, basketball, and softball, where my girls went and won. We were section up. We were league champions for the first time in like 10 years in that school. And so it was accomplishment. And we are, I love coaching. Like I've always loved teaching, and I've always loved coaching. I've coached when I was 19 years old, right out of high school, league baseball, because they needed a coach. And so I did it. And I just love watching kids get better, learning the sport and getting better, loving the sport. And I'm in my doctor's program now. I have a master's in education, and I'm in my doctor's program because I want to go into curriculum and instruction where I could actually look at the curriculum that are working, not just curriculum because it's there. I want to find that's working for all students so that we can, because I see some of the scores and I see some of the test results, and I know that there's a way to impact kids better. And last year when I was able to see, last year was great because they did a testing from the kids when they're like kindergarten all the way to high school, and you could see the improvement. And this may be kind of toot my own horn, but the kids that I got last year, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, they grew 99 in the 99 percentile. So to me, if another teacher could have done that prior to that, the kids would have gotten so much better, And it's just, I went and found every technique, every strategy I could, because my goal is to help the kids. It's kind of like this year we were asking, it was extra money to what we want with the extra money. And some teachers would get chairs and desks and computers. I wanted programs. I wanted curriculum. I wanted something that's going to help the students. I'm not worried about getting me a new chair or getting a computer. I want to get something that's going to help the students get better, so that, because they're going to be the future. I mean, if I don't help them out, they're going to be on government assistance, and that's not helping anybody. So if I can help them to be out there and be successful somewhere, it's going to help us in the long run. Plus, it'll make them happier people.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, as I say, what do you teach? What subject or grade?
I am a resource math teacher in high school.
Okay. Yeah, that's the individual who gives the more one-on-one type attention, right? Helps the struggling students. Is that correct?
Yes, that's students who, have an IEP. They're either, a lot of them are probably 4 to 5 grade level. And so got to, it's finding strategies that's going to help them learn. And I've pushed and co-taught with gen ed teachers also, but like that, I like resource students.
Let's go back to, yeah, you said you were doing a little bit of coaching for bull riding.
Yeah, I do. We'll put out a rodeo school. I got a buddy who has a little bucket arena. So he put a bull riding school. I'd be out there helping with some of the people. I did, and then there was another friend of mine who has one in his backyard in Red Bluff, and they'd have kids out there, and we'd work with them. We work with the little kids a little bit. My partner and I we started an association right now, and we're going to talk about, how can we get bull riders, because right now there's a lack of bull riders. There's bulls are getting good, riders are not, and so we are trying to figure out how we can get more bull riders, because there's a lot of bulls that needs job now because there's not enough.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, so you're actually one of those people creating the bulls still, right? You have your business, Soksoda Bucking Bulls.
Yes, we just had a heifer born too, and so yeah, we're raising bucking bulls. When my long-time friend passed away a few years ago, because I left rodeo for a long time. When I came up to Reading and started getting a job, started teaching, I left rodeo, and then he passed away. So we had a memorial for him, and made me miss it. And so I just started raising bucking bulls and hauling them now. And like my wife went to the ABBI finals last year. It was a great experience for her, and she's excited to go back this year. So we have some bulls we're going to compete with this year to try to get it back there.
Yeah, and this is another type of sport. I saw it, and I'm not that familiar with it, but you don't ride it, but they judge the bull on its ability to buck, correct?
Have a kind of a box they put on top of the bull, and then he bucks for about 4 seconds, and then the judge marks the ability of the bull. And so these bulls are about a year and 2 years old, because once you get to 3, they put a rider on them. So these are yearlings and 2-year-olds, young bulls, going to be superstars in the future type of deal. That's what they're trying for. That's why I said the bulls are getting better, but the riders aren't. So we have a lack of riders right now, because we have rodeos where there's only like 5 guys coming to get on. But normally there's 15, 20 guys. Okay, there's a Lane Frost quote that says, "Don't be afraid to go after what you want, but also don't be afraid to sacrifice what you have to get there." And I think the thing is, you have to know what you want and go after it. I think that I did that. I wanted to ride bulls, and I did everything I could to get there, and I worked my butt off to make sure that I can get there. And it's going to be there's going to be a lot of barriers, going to be a lot of pushback, but if you really truly want it, don't let anything stop you from getting what you want. I mean, that's the same way I was with riding bulls. That's the same thing I was with rodeo. I mean, with football, same thing I was with coaching. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, no, you can't do it, or you shouldn't do it. And like my mom, she was just more afraid of me getting hurt. Not that she didn't want me to be successful. I mean, she's proud of me now as a teacher and going to school, but like she didn't want me to get hurt. And that's part of it. I mean, if you got to know what the cost is. I mean, riding bulls, you could, it could be your life, but if you love it enough, and it's just something that you do because you love it. And I think that, like I said, riding bulls is one of those things that you can get hurt. The old saying, it's not if you're gonna get hurt, it's when and how bad. And I got hurt. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I got my knees busted. I tore my ligaments. I broke my leg, but I loved it so much that I wasn't willing to let that injury take me out of rodeo. I rode until I couldn't ride anymore, and I felt like I quit. I retired because I didn't want the bullfighters to get hurt because of me, not because my love for it, or I couldn't do it. I could still do it, but I know that I couldn't run away from the bull, and that would sacrifice the bullfighters. So, just like I said, if anybody wants to ride bulls and want to learn how to ride bulls, there are people out there that's willing to help you, and just go after it.
Great. Well, thank you, Billy, for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night, man.
Wow, John, what an amazing story. I'm so glad to have Billy on as a guest today. Listening to him talk, about going to high school and getting into a fight every day. It just, I couldn't even, I don't even I wouldn't have an idea, like how I would deal with that. But for him to just, every day, just keep going and not, I don't know, not surrendering or not giving up. I thought that was very deep when he talked about that, about his adversity in high school.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost humbling talking to a guy like that, right? With all that he's accomplished.
Yeah.
He started from nothing, right?
Yeah.
And went into a sport where no other Lao people have ever went. And did it his way. And not only that, the guy's still going. He recently got back into selling the bucking bulls. He's retired. He can't climb onto the back of a bull anymore, but he's still in the industry and in the business. And he makes me feel bad. He's now working on his PhD on top of all this. So yeah, great guy. Truly inspiring. Truly an inspiring guy.
Yeah, and definitely, and just giving back. What do you say? He's coaching football or just working with kids, working with athletes, just kind of passing on the gift. He was very athletic, played all types of sports, fell in love with rodeo, and now I think he's back at the high school and teaching kids. There's no other feeling than giving back, especially to the future. So
yeah, for sure. And the good thing is what we're finding as we go on this journey is, as inspiring as his story is, it's not unique. There's a lot of great stories out there, and we've got a lot more to come. A lot more athletes and a lot more accomplished individuals.
Yeah. Athletes ranging from, fitness individuals to team sports, individual Olympians, Olympic type of sports. We got a big list of people that we're going to be, interviewing in the near future. So everybody just, stay tuned, and really thank you for all the support. If you know of anyone, any great athletes out there that went through a lot of adversity, please message us, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. Remember to subscribe to our podcast. It's available on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and of course our YouTube channel, where you can watch the video as well. Like and subscribe. Let us know what you think. Thanks.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. Visit us on the web at laoamericansports.com. That's LAO Americansports.com.